Hey everyone, and welcome back to the Proving Grounds Pod, your one-stop shop for all things Proving Grounds. My name is Max, and I'm joined by my constant co-host, Cubby. And today, on this very special Thursday, a week before the beginning of Proving Grounds, mind you, we've got a very special guest, Dean Rebel Fox Merrick. Dean, welcome. How are you?
Doing good. Coming off of a cast. Excited for Proving Grounds. Good to be here. Thanks for having me.
That is why
Absolutely.
we're slightly delayed, but thank you for doing double duty. And yeah, I'm excited for this. It's been a while since we've actually talked with another caster on here. I know that we try and talk with a lot of players and coaches, but I know that you fall into not only the category of a caster, but also somewhat of a coach. I know we were talking about this before we just started the stream, but a lot of people don't realize you actually help out with some of Maryville's work, especially their secondary team. Do you kind of want to talk about that? Because I don't know how many people realize, watching your cast that you actually do Maryville stuff as well.
Yeah, I get it a lot behind the scenes, but I suppose people watching don't really get the meme of my bias towards Maryville because it just pops up on broadcast. But yeah, I attend the Maryville University, and so when I first joined, I wanted to come on as an analyst. I was brought in as a student assistant alongside Tej, which a lot of people know. He's brilliant, absolute amazing. Supporting Zoo. Back then, we had two teams. We had Maryville Red and Maryville Black, both of which were in needing of support from analysts, especially because Zoo was bouncing between the two. So Tej would typically handle Maryville Red. I would handle Maryville Black. In the modern day, Maryville Black doesn't have the same kind of team structure yet because we're still waiting on players to arrive and things like that for the spring. So for the moment, most of what I do is just covering broadcast. And then whenever there's something that Maryville hosts, for example, they've done a couple of scouting combines for collegiate and then also for Oceanic players who are wanting to get noticed by teams coming to NA. Both of those times I would work as a scout, I would work as lobby creator, and in one of them I was actually an observer recording videos for players and things so that scouts would have content to actually watch so they could see players off of just the VODs from Twitch.
Producer Rebel.
Yeah.
Hopefully it's better than Producer Cubby. I'd get fired if I had that job, actually. Employed not by myself.
You wouldn't even land the job, Cubby.
No, I would not. So that's cool. And I think that having that perspective behind the scenes as well is definitely something that there's a whole lot of discussion going around color casters, what qualifies you. It's not necessary, but also it can only help you. And I think it helps me a lot being a coach. I'm kind of curious, what do you draw upon that when it comes to crossing your work that you do with teams, but also incorporating that into your work that you do on broadcast?
One of the biggest things that I took from it when I first started there, oftentimes I hadn't actually gotten much of a perspective because I did coaching for a diamond level team and I played on a couple of teams, which is how I got my start, which I know we'll talk about later.
Yeah.
But when I first started, Zoo is really, really good at doing VOD reviews for pretty much anything. Person, caster, team, whatever it might be. So when we're running VOD reviews and I get a chance to listen to what he has to say, I get a chance to submit notes to him and then he gives feedback. He's like, okay, this doesn't matter or this isn't something we're talking about. It comes down to the structure of how the team would actually play out games, right? That's what Zoo was kind of all about. And so that was something I got to just absorb so much of when I first came in, that casting, you get to see all the surface level, you get to see the game as it goes and you get to watch and create your own analyses. But then when you get that perspective of what does a coach look for, what are the highest level thinkers in this game watching when they watch this game live, being able to take any of that and incorporate it into a cast just immediately transforms what you're able to do.
Yeah, I know for me, I've been able to garner some of that just by either asking other coaches or getting told, hey, you're a fucking dumbass for saying this on a cast. Here's what you should actually say. So that whether it's harsh or constructive, either way, it is really interesting. Was that an intention of yours when you got into Maryville to try to get better at that side of esports?
Yeah, being an analyst for Maryville was a goal when I came in because I knew I wanted to be a caster. But being an analyst and being somebody who's able to study for a team, being able to be a weapon that a team could use to improve themselves somehow, was kind of the goal also. Because I knew when I got to watch Maryville, they were obviously one of the best teams at the time. I think they took fourth in scouting grounds that year, something along those lines, third at scouting grounds, something along those lines. And they had incredible performances. And what I usually have been told is that sometimes I have unique perspectives on how the game works. And so sharing those, being like, okay, I could try to, distill these into something useful for somebody, so I could take the number one collegiate squad, give them something new to work on, and then that would be what my analytics would be for. And that was the intention coming in, which I then obviously improved dramatically because, Zoo wasn't going to have any nonsense. He was going to have only constructive stuff that's going to help his team.
Yeah. Definitely no nonsense human. Which, hey, I mean, that's if you improve quicker and you start contributing more to team conversation, that's great. I know that I kind of skipped around. We wanted to go into something else at first, but since we were talking about that beforehand, I thought it was an interesting way to start at least.
Yeah. Getting us back on track as I take the conductor's hat away from Cubby, who has kicked it into the dirt. So Dean, for those of you, for those people who are listening and don't know who you are, what all-encompassing is your job or any job that you currently do regarding esports right now?
So at the moment, I work primarily as a color caster, along with you fine gentlemen in both NA Amateur and Academy. That's probably the primary role. I serve as obviously like an analyst, scout, assistant for that kind of stuff, and supporting staff essentially for most of the Maryville stuff. They would go, be it games, be it anything of that sort. I also work as a kind of a pinch hitting play-by-play desk host and desk analyst for pretty much anybody that does need it at any time for the broadcasts that I'm working on. It's not ideal because it's not what I like to do as much as I like to do color, but like I usually am able to fill those roles to some extent, hopefully for most people inside of esports.
I understand that. The Smacks Cubby casting duo was fun, albeit short-lived. So I had my fair share of play-by-play things. So what got you started in all of this? When did you begin, and what piqued your interest in the first place for broadcasting specifically?
Oh, broadcasting specifically. So the initial kind of touchdown for me, freshman year of college, I was an econ major, and I went to a bad school, so it was boring, like really boring, to the point where I didn't have to go to class to get A's, which was quite nice. But it meant I had too much free time for like a college student, so I was 19 with all the free time in the world, and I stumbled upon StarCraft 2, which was really late in the game because it was already like late in the game, 2016. So the game was essentially dead by that point, but like it's not ever going to be a dead game because it's the only of its genre. It's the only RTS remaining.
So like
but 17, I got to watch
16, 17?
16, 17. It was the end of 16, which was the year that Beyond beat Dark in the finals. That was the first match I ever watched. And when I watched it, I just remember thinking like, I don't know anything about StarCraft, but I love this. Everything about this is awesome. And I just kept watching it over and over again. And I watched 7 games of a game I'd never seen before. And I was like, wow, this is incredible. So I fell in love with broadcast. So I started watching StarCraft and League and all the other games that I had played previously.
So you didn't
and getting into League
until 2016?
No, StarCraft until 2016. League, I started watching League in 2015 before I even started playing because my brother would watch TSM. So the first game I ever watched was TSM versus C9 2015 Spring Final.
Okay.
That was fun.
This is really interesting. I've never heard of anyone who watched League and also other esports before playing it. Usually it's the other way around. How did
Yeah, I watched League and then started playing League, and then I watched StarCraft and started playing StarCraft. And that's what inspired me to do those things, because I just see these people doing incredible things, and I'm like, wow, I wish I could do that, and then try and fail inevitably.
That's really crazy. So, like, for me, I was playing this with my like middle school friends, and we were just like terrible at the game. And I was playing Lulu. I had no idea what her abilities did, and just feeding it right away. And your first bout into League of Legends was watching the best players in the entire hemisphere
That's
playing a game that you had no idea what it was. That's really insane. And okay, so did you want to do like StarCraft broadcasting first, or did you like switch over to League after that?
I really wanted to do StarCraft broadcasting. There was a point where I actually applied for it, but unfortunately, the amateur scene for StarCraft is pretty much non-existent in North America and most places. And so finding gigs was very difficult because there's a lot of very talented StarCraft players. Not to mention the bar for entry is ridiculously high for StarCraft compared to what League of Legends was at the time, at least. And now I think it's raised even beyond what it was before. But for StarCraft, it's like these people they've done it since StarCraft 1. Before like I was even born, the game was out, and these people were like experts at the game then. Yeah. And so I'm stepping into, the third installment of StarCraft 2 watching the finals, and I'm like, wow, I want to broadcast. Like, I had no shot. It's never going to happen.
And then the game died in like a year.
And then it died like the next year,
God.
And now I still keep track of it to this day because it's still really interesting to me, but like
really?
Not the same it was, yeah.
Oh, man. I remember like I got into like League around like season 2, season 3, but I didn't play a lot of StarCraft. But my cousins they're all older, and they love that game. And so I would stay up and watch like the Korean finals, and like they had the craziest like intros like on broadcast. Like there's like one where they literally had, it was like before I started watching, but it's like one of like the most famous ones, where they had the tournament in an airport like hangar bay, and they had a player come out of an airport like an airplane. Like to like go play StarCraft. It was fucking sweet.
It's badass.
Yeah. And I think it was
awesome.
It might have been like Polt, like one of like the really like famous like legendary ones. Or
Polt is my favorite player of all time.
Really?
Nobody will ever beat Polt. I got to watch Polt. Here's what Polt did one game, which is what sold me that StarCraft was the greatest game to ever exist and nothing will ever compete.
Yeah.
He played the strategy at the time, which is like 2016, early 2016, mid 2016, Marine, Marauder, Medevac, which is the two base units and then the healing like drone to carry them around.
Yeah,
that was
you were
the strategy.
Terran, and then you just go like fast attack, right?
Yeah, and you'd fast attack. Now he decided to cut out the upgrades, the Marauders, and the Medevacs. He did Marine Rush with like 4, 5, 6 barracks and just flooded soldiers in like a Zerg would with like Zerglings, like you would imagine.
Yeah.
And he won with it. And I was like, I have no idea what I just watched. But the casters were going nuts because they're like, these are unupgraded. They're just streaming in soldiers, throwing things in it. He just keeps going. And he won. And it was like, from that point, I was like, oh yeah. But that's why Polt, I knew Polt. When I saw he was going to join T1 too as a coach, I was excited. I know a bunch of people lost it, but like, I was really excited to see him join. So
it's funny how it was like the one player I knew. It's like, dude, that's my favorite. It's like,
yeah,
let's go. I got one in there. Yeah. So I used to like
Polt the guy who came off the plane? Was that him?
No, I don't even think it was Polt. It was like the most famous StarCraft 1 player of all time.
I was really StarCraft 1 players. I didn't watch.
I think it was Fly.
At all. Fly?
Or no, it was Flash. It was Flash. Flash came off the plane, and I think he was playing
jet lag,
up against like Jadon or like something like that. Yeah.
Okay.
It was before I started watching esports, but it's like the one StarCraft final like in OGN broadcast that like everyone will link you like if you ask about it because it's just so cool. Like it did in a hangar bay, and it came out of a plane. It's like that's pretty cool. So, God bless Korean production of gaming events. Still far superior.
Yeah.
And so now we have Rebel Fox, who got inspired from that and will bring the plane meta to League of Legends broadcasting for sure. So between 2016, where you're watching League and you're watching StarCraft, and now, what steps did you take to get that broadcasting like desire that you had 5 years ago, and then turn it into working directly with Riot on Academy?
Yeah, so to kick it back to when I first started casting at all, like recorded casting live for people on Twitch, because usually I would just record StarCraft games for my own devices just because I found it entertaining. one afternoon, I found myself with nothing better to do because my girlfriend had fallen asleep at the time. And so I was like, I have nothing to do for 6 hours. And I was in a league as a support substitute for a team in like a gold plat league. It was like plat 4 was or plat 5 at the time was the maximum. You weren't allowed to be higher than plat 5. And if you were, then it was considered something. So I was the substitute on this team, and the league sent out a thing, and they're like, hey, we need, broadcast team for tonight. And I was like, hey, I know I've never done it before, but like I've practiced, would you mind if I did it for like the team I was playing for? And they were like, yeah, come on in. So I like join in. There is a single producer, some of the worst overlay graphics you've ever seen, and I was the only caster.
All been there.
Sounds about right.
So I started off my career as a solo caster, which it was for like a pretty big upset inside the league because my team was the number 1, or the team I was substituting for was the number 1, and the number 2 had beaten them to take the number 1 spot. But that was pretty exciting. People really liked what I did. So from that point, I just continued in that league. That league ended up folding, and then they carried over casters when they turned into best of 3s, which took forever. And for some reason, they lowered the number of casters instead of raising the number of casters they had. So I got kicked out. Then I came back eventually because I was like, hey, I used to cast for this league. Can I do it again? And they're like, yes. And then from there, I moved to eventually ABL, which is the first name that people might actually recognize, was ABL back in the day.
ABL.
When ABL did the things that were very bad, like scamming off of UPL and things like that, I was not there yet. Then they did that, got a bunch of harassment. Then they lost their producer and their channel because he took the stream key with him. And so they had to restart from the bottom up. That restructuring was me, alongside a couple of other casters. Like if you know Milky Cereal or Zephyr, that's where we came from. That's where all of us came from.
Both those.
Yeah. So from there, I ended up transitioning into UCL. UCL finals needed a pinch hitting caster. So I sent a message to the producer at the time, Mr. Elton Mock, who decided that I was the person to bring in for the job. So I got to join Yasuo, if either of you two know Yasuo. And for the first time, I casted on UCL, which carried over to UPL the next season where I kicked off. And they were like, wow, where the hell have you been? And I'm like, okay, well, people like what I do. Nice. So I continued with ABL. Yeah, just keep going. So I was on UPL. I was on ABL from time to time, but that league eventually like kind of tapered off. Turned into Focus and Risen. Both of those brought me in back when Sabe was running Focus, and Joe had met me through like UPL and other casters. So I did a couple for him.
2020 now.
This would have been into 2020, which is when Scouting Grounds started.
Yeah.
So then all 3 of those leagues get picked up for Scouting Ground circuit, and I was elated because I'm like, I'm part of all those. I get to cast a bunch of, Scouting Grounds, League of Legends. And from there, I think it's just a combination of the addition of yourself and other casters in that same area. Because until that point, it had been like this big separation between amateur and academy, whereas like I see Joshi and I see Coco and I see the color casters that work at the next level. And then there's like this big barrier. And then there's like me down here in like the piss ants, basically. And all of a sudden, they're like academy and amateur are going to come together and coalesce slightly with the Scouting Grounds idea. And that's all of a sudden when like they started to come down, which also lifted me, I think, up into this discussion. And then when the comparison was there, all of us just started raising each other's levels by just improving game knowledge and practicing more and more.
Honestly, like, it is pretty wild to think, like, a year ago now, there's just this giant fucking wall between amateur and academy.
Mm-hmm.
And, I mean, it's the one that everyone sees is for players, but that kind of applied to casters as well. And not so much anymore.
Mm-hmm.
Or I think
that
I think that people like still kind of feel like there might be one, but it's a lot less visible. Just because instead of Academy, which was run by one company, it's now Proving Grounds, which throughout the span of this year has been produced by
like
8. Yeah. 8 companies. So yeah.
It's a lot.
Yeah.
And I mean, one of the cool things about having you on here, Dean, is that as far as the new casters that were brought on for like the academy stuff, there's Rafa, there's Mazel, and then there's the 3 of us who are the color casters. That's us. And I actually, before I even thought to get you on, I was going to make like a big tweet thread about how cool that was. But I figured, oh, wait, why don't we just talk to Dean instead? so I can sort of reflect on that. And yeah, I think you're completely right that the space last year, like Cubby and I have had so many conversations about this over the last year or so, that like we wanted to first talk and meet with Joshi and Coco and like the other color casters and see like what they're doing that makes them so good and try to do our own thing that is as good. And I mean, clearly the three of us have been able to do something at least similar to that. What do you think that you did to make yourself and your brand as Rebel Fox like push that and make this barrier lessened, as you said?
It was it's interesting going back because I do remember like with Mr. Mizell, both of us like trying to break into Academy. And at the time, like the closest thing to Academy that we were capable of breaking into because they were open applications were League Redacted or BIG, which was hilarious to think about. And I just remember like trying to apply for that. I had this whole thread in 2020, so I'm not going to reopen like what I talked about on that about you, Cubby, you, Smacks, all that kind of stuff. But I remember that opening my eyes because I was thinking like, you know, I rose really fast from like gold platinum to effectively like challenger and near academy level. And so I wanted the train to keep running. And I guess I never took a second to step back and go, okay, what's wrong with my casting? What's bad about my casting? Instead, I was just like, here's what I do good. I'm going to keep doing those things better instead of being like, what is wrong or like, what can be improved or, you know, having introspection and even things like different perspectives on how am I using my language, how am I interacting with my co-caster, things like that. That just like most of the time when you're in gold, plat, diamond leagues, you're getting a random person that you don't know. And sometimes you're scheduled like 30 minutes before the game. So you're like, I don't even know who this person is and we're going to cast in 30 minutes. So it was finally like time for me to like settle down and be like, now I can work with Mazel consistently. I can work with Mad Magical now and some of the other like academy guys and some of the other play-by-plays like Ravish that have stepped up. And that I think having that consistent rapport has really done a number for everybody, play-by-plays and colors combined.
Yeah, I think that's definitely interesting. I think like the like joined experience of everyone on the caster's side anyway has been really cool over the past year or so. A lot of people don't know this, but a good chunk of that actually came directly from you in about like September, October of last year when it came to the Scouting Grounds unofficial broadcast. Do you want to tell us that story about how that happened?
Yeah, I'm going to start by rewinding back to previous, which was I remembered the previous year Face It had run Scouting Grounds, right?
Correct.
And they played like 2 games. And I'm like, what are you doing? Why are you playing 2 games? So then 2020 came around and I was like, we have a whole Discord of casters.
Which was XT's.
What's the worst Face It can say is no. Yeah. So I was like, hey, we'll do this. All of us have been working for effectively free as it is, so like might as well.
Pretty much.
And Face It came back and they were like, let's make it happen. And I'm like, okay, cool. So then they started corresponding with Riot, and Riot's like, we can get you guys tournament realm accounts. And I'm like,
yep.
Started scheduling casters as much as I could. Even to this day, I feel like there's both positive interactions and connections that I made because of that, and also the opposite, which is true. But I don't care because I think it did a lot for a bunch of us in the casting scene. And when that worked with Face It, I was just like, well, I was one connection away from Riot. And then I'm like, Scouting Grounds has the whole week of practice that they do because they submitted that schedule. And then it's like, okay, we get like the 3rd, 4th match in the finals. And I'm like, why wouldn't these players want more exposure? Why wouldn't you want to do a whole broadcast of every game that they play or as many as possible? So I just sent Riot and I was like, I'd like to do coverage, if possible, of like the games. Like, heck, just like stream them somewhere and let us cast over them, and we'll give more exposure to the players and teams. And Riot came back and they're like, we got to get approval. We got to do all this like red tape stuff, but they never said no. And all this time, like every time they said something, they came back to me. They were like, oh, we got to do this. And I'm like, this is the death of it. I'm not getting past this. Kept going. And eventually they're like, all right. And I'm like, it worked. So that's how we got to scouting grounds and eventually being broadcast, which is how we were able to do unofficial scouting grounds. It was scuffed beyond belief.
Yeah,
We were doing things that none of us had ever done before, and probably will never try to do again.
The feeds were the chat
Something
had a lot
else.
of different famous
Feedback.
artist names being thrown around in chat to describe what was painted by the feeds at times.
I think my favorite one was the coleslaw.
Yeah. There were definitely some there were some interesting moments there, but also those were two of the biggest projects that were put together last year that you headed up as project manager, which once again, I don't think a lot of people realize, because you do keep quiet about that stuff, which I do respect. Like, but also those are big projects that were led by you. So yeah.
It's a matter of, like, when I do something good, especially for the scene like that, it's not, I don't want it to be reflected as like Rebel Box's win. I want it to be like a scene win,
what I did,
which is why. Yeah, look what happened with the scene. The scene was able to make this happen. So even if we come out and we have scuffed coleslaw streams, even if we come out and we have people get removed from broadcast because APA's internet is getting trashed. And now I will say we low-key saved that event, because if that had happened on the 3rd, 4th match, they would have scrapped that. We would have had one game, one series played.
I didn't think about that. It's a good point.
Yeah,
that's true.
We saved scouting grounds. That's how I like to imagine it, because we had a lot of scuff problems. We had a lot of issues. I don't think I could apologize enough to everybody on that crew, because we went through so much. But we were the saviors of that scouting ground. So I can always hold my head high knowing that. And then, yeah.
Yeah. That was the first time that a good chunk of us had like worked and casted together, like all as a group, which was really cool. That was like a lot of fun, but probably wouldn't do that again.
No, not that way again.
No,
it was a learning experience for all of us.
Yeah.
We had to turn around a lot in a very small space, which was difficult, and we did it with no funds. We did it out of the goodness of our hearts, which, again, all of us had been doing that for a long time, so it made sense anyway. And all we wanted was to make sure that players got more exposure, and players got as much as we could give them. So,
yeah,
it was a good project. I was very appreciative.
Yeah. So
because I didn't want to be leading those. You did. I was glad to be a part of it. I didn't want to lead it, but we had you. That was really good. And yeah, that was definitely like some of the highlights of last year too. Like just having those two put together, because like I remember like it being done. Rafa did his retirement stream. We were all talking about how we were like doing our twit longers. We were like, oh, it's all over like for this split. Like we got no more games. And then Dean just puts together this like group of 10 people and he's like, yo, we're doing Face It. We're like, no fucking way. And it's like, yeah. And it's like, then it's like 2 weeks later. He's like,
the Avengers theme.
Yo, I'm talking to Riot.
I was just like flying out of the Doctor Strange portals.
It's no pay, but it's on Academy. You guys want to do it? We're like, yeah. Like we got 8 people like instantly. Oh man, yeah, that was fun.
Yeah, it was really fun.
Rafa got back out of retirement.
The Rafa retirement stream gets me every time. Everyone was so emotional, and then just like a few months later, we get the news that Proving Grounds is happening. He's like, oh, I'm deleting that VOD. I'm unretiring.
Good decision.
Yeah. Dean, how early into the Proving Grounds like announcement did you hear about it?
I think I read about it on Rafa's Discord like 30 minutes after it was posted online. Because people just went nuts talking about Proving Grounds and the system that had been reinvented. And all of us, it obviously entailed all of us. And so it was like, they're taking Scouting Grounds and they're taking it to the next level. No longer is there any barrier, because it used to be like, okay, you go to Scouting Grounds, a couple of players get picked up, like a handful at a time. And we're going to keep doing that ad infinitum. And all of a sudden it's like, nope, 6 teams from amateur, no matter what, get to compete against academy teams and go head to head. And I remember all of us, or at least a good number of people, were like, wow, amateur is going to get dicked year in and year out, no matter what. And that's okay, because it's the first time we'll get a chance to see players like against academy teams, right?
Yeah, and then
we were wrong.
Well, then the rosters started coming out, and we were like,
yeah,
oh, no, the rosters.
So yeah, that's one of the reasons that I was asking is because Cubby and I had an informant who will remain nameless right now, but we knew about this that was going to happen at like November.
November, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Because
like
this December, maybe.
This is like a really weird time for me too, because I was full-time job hunting, and I was like ready to get a job where it's like ends at 5, like work marketing 9 to 5, maybe do casting and like coaching if I have time, like when I get back, and like that's life, right? And then I heard of Proving Grounds coming out, and then we knew about the 6 TOs in advance, and then we heard rumors like what the rates would be, and I did the math, and I was like, well, it's not a full-time job, but I was like, I like this better. And so like that time like actually changed the trajectory for at least where I was going, like drastically, not even like just what I wanted to do. Because we didn't know what it was going to look like. That was actually like some of the wildest times. It's like no, for amateur esports, November, December, it's just fucking dead. Like we didn't know how good EGP were, because it was like the competition was it was zilch, right? Like Just Randoms was okay. Some of those players went to 100 next, but everyone else is like off, like enjoying the holidays, like waiting for gaming to start back up in January, right? It's what it is.
Yeah. It was a weird time, but at the same time, we were getting all this news like, oh, we're gonna it's working directly with Riot, this academy, like everything's gonna happen where there's going to be an amateur team. We didn't actually know it was going to be an amateur team, but we heard that one of the teams was going to be Tuesday Apollo Zazel. And we're like, holy shit, that's a really good academy team.
Roster's insane.
They weren't an academy. So like
when all 5 of those players like put up the contract gifts, we're all like, oh man, I wonder which academy team they're going to.
Yeah.
I remember people saying like, oh yeah, this is Dignitas Academy, and I'm like, wow, Dignitas Academy is going to be really good. And we get I didn't even find out until the Risen sheet came out, because like we get the broadcast sheet like maybe a day or two before anything starts, and I saw a non-academy team, and I'm like, what the hell, man? Like, what is this? Oh my god.
That was a really fun time. And then we also heard about the Barrage Boys team, and we heard about like the
new squad
org team. The Anu team.
Speak about org that cannot be named, but the Anu, like they announced their first roster, and they're like, we have 2 more, and we were like, what?
Like, you have 2 more rosters? The other 2 are better than this one?
Yeah, Alorum was on the second one. We're like,
there's
another.
Like Alorum's on the second one.
Like, wait, 5 Fire is not playing with Alorum? It's like,
dude, I remember there was a conversation about how Alorum like was like maybe better and it should have been like swapped with Viper. I remember that was like a whole discussion on one of the days. We couldn't have been more wrong. But it's funny thinking back on stuff like that. Yeah. Oh man, that was a crazy time. But
yeah, when the Viper and a roster was announced, we were all like,
wow,
amateur's over. And then they choked the first tournament.
They did.
Yeah. Oh, that was scary.
That was that first tournament was awesome, because that was our first look at like what effectively got established as this amateur versus academy storyline, where Solafide is effectively the villain because they're all academy players, and we're just like, you can get them Anu, and then Anu didn't do it, and then it's like, you can get them EGP, and EGP couldn't do it in the finals, so you can get a Barrage, and they take them to 5-2, and it's nobody could beat them, and we're just like, man, everything we thought was right. Everybody's competing, but everything we thought was right.
Yeah. Oh, that was so awesome. So all of this is going on, right? And you're a part of the first 2.
You're doing
first
school.
3, right?
Yeah.
And you're going to school, and you're doing Maryville things.
Correct.
All this is going on. Was there a point where you realized that like you wanted to dedicate like everything to broadcast specifically at this point, like what was like the big selling point in the Proving Grounds space that made you be like, okay, this is what I'm doing right now. I'm going to do all these improvements that you said before with Mizell, like working with Riot, super cool opportunity. Where was that for you in this year?
It was like sometime right after Risen. I remember there were a couple of things going on in the back of my like head, which was MU Black during the second tournament kind of ended up falling through. They ended up not doing much, and from that point they stopped competing. So that was the point where I like wasn't doing as much analytics. Like I would step into like VOD reviews for Red, and I'd be like, I can add some, but like with Tej, Julian, and Zoo all doing it, like what is my input? Was some like 6-month addition to the roster going to add too much to this? I had at one point I was in talks with a team to actually build a roster for them, but they never got the funding together to pay players, so I never got a chance to do that. And then from that point, it was
at least they stopped before then, and didn't just keep.
They did. They weren't solo fide, so. But yeah, and then from that point, it was like there were a couple other things that were running in the background that kind of stalled out, and so at one point I was just like, I got nothing to do but cast in school, and school was like, it was tough, but it wasn't anything I couldn't manage. So I'm like, I'm gonna spend as much time as I can just perfecting craft, doing better, because the end was in sight, at least for the first time. Once the wall was down, or at least the gate was down, so we could see our way through, it was like, even if it doesn't take one split, if it takes 2, 3, 4 splits, I've got time to go from I'm going to cast the first 2 and then UGP to I'm going to make my way up and I'm going to cast all of them, or I'm going to cast in Proving Grounds, because that was my goal in the first split, was like I want to cast in Proving Grounds. And then I remember like seeing you guys got to do tier 1s, and I'm like, I was happy for you guys, it was great, but not getting tier 1s after the first one, I was like, I'm probably not going to Proving Grounds. Once I got the email that I was going to Proving Grounds, I'm like, this is what I want to do forever. Because I was like, there's nothing that makes me happier than like casting during this process, but then getting the ability to go do it on the Academy channel in front of thousands of people is like, it's pretty nice.
Yeah, I definitely relate to that. I mean, there were a bunch of moments this year where like I had to just like give myself a talk where I was like, I wasn't picked for this, and this sucks. I can't. Will I keep doing this? I'm really sad. One of those was EGL, which you guys did, which was awesome. But I mean, for you, it was awesome. It was not awesome for Twitter, but we'll breeze over that.
It was not awesome for Twitter. Just leave it at that.
But then, after the EGL announcement happened, that was okay. So this was like week 5 of the Academy like regular split, and I still hadn't gone on that, and I was like, it's doomed. I'm not doing Academy. I'm not doing EGL. Nobody wants me to be on their stuff. And then they reach out to me for that, and I think you got on around that time too.
I think I was on week 4, and then you were on week 4, week 5 or something like that. Yeah.
Yeah. And I was like, holy shit. I'm working with Riot for Academy now. They pay real money. This is super cool.
This is true.
Yeah. Oh man. Yeah, this split in specific has been really crazy for that. I know. Yeah.
This split has been just like a godsend, because this is the first time since like Scouting Grounds that I've worked every tournament, because this rotation I did every single event top to bottom.
You did Risen. Yeah.
I did. Yeah. And every other one I was able to work in, thankfully, as well. I don't know why I got brought in for EGL. That was the one question mark, because out of nowhere they were just like, hey, you want to be an desk analyst? I was like, why are you asking me? There's so many other people that you could, like Joshi at that time was not on the broadcast, and I'm like, why is Joshi not on this? Why am I on this? But I was like, okay, I'll do it. I've been covering every other one, so like I might as well. And then it's also been cool like seeing what everybody else is doing, because like even while like League of Legends and Amateur is going on, I still get to see like Mizell's off in China now, where he's like doing LPL stuff. Cubby, like
Pivot Alex,
Him and Alex, yeah. You're doing league day stuff, and it's cool to see you and Kari doing that stuff. And then the other thing is, like, I worked for Challenges Uprising for the first time, and I got to meet TJ. I did not ever really have an opinion on TJ. I know he got a ton of flack for what he did. I didn't like agree with people like flaming him for a lot of the things he did on broadcast, but like I had never met him before. Working with him on that desk was one of the coolest things. It was some of the best desks I've ever done was with
He's
TJ.
so good.
And so seeing
Yeah.
him on like league day too was really cool because I was like, wow, he and Cubby are rocking it on league day. And then even seeing like Rafa and Smacks and you guys, Alk, off on like what is effectively the bare bones of what will be like Wild Rift's LCS. It's like cool to see all these people that like I put together in that broadcast team like branch out and do amazing things. It's really nice.
That's like, I think that's something that like we've gotten lucky with so far because
very lucky, yeah. But also like we put in a ton of work for it.
Well, it's not even that. It's just like community wise, right? Like we are the three of us are competitive. Like we are competing for spots, right?
Yeah.
But like it doesn't feel that way, right? And like, you know, if someone else gets a gig like over, you know, someone else, usually it's like, oh shit, I thought it should have been me, but hey, they're good. Congrats. I'll get the next one, right? And like that's the mentality that it feels like a lot of us have, which I feel like is healthy. Like I never look at other cover casters and be like, fuck this guy. Like this guy hates me. Like he doesn't root for me. Like it's never like that. And so I like the fact that like you're highlighting this, like I appreciate and enjoy, and something that I think that at least in the NA scene, like for us, we have gotten pretty lucky with. Like there's been very few casters that have like gone further than saying like, oh, you know, like they got the gig instead of me, you know, they're good, it's whatever, it's like it sucks for me, but like that's it. Like they're like I feel like that's the appropriate way to handle it, and I don't really hear often like more than that publicly. Like privately, maybe in DMs, you know, like they're just fucking spitting fire, but sometimes you got to do that to like get the monkey off your back too, right? That's like that's the mental reset, right? It's like the vent session, like the vents I gave Rafa today. I sent him an Among Us vent. That was good shit. I'll send the message to Dean after this. It's it was
I
fucking
can't believe
stupid,
you did that to him.
It was so good, yeah. But like it's like definitely something where it's like the community isn't all like communities aren't always like this. I have not been in communities that are competitive but also supportive. And you need to support other casters like, you know, improve and get further.
Yeah.
But it also is competitive, like you're competing for spots. So it's good to hear like that's a perspective that I definitely feel like I take for granted a lot, because that is fortunately like for the most part where we're at the moment. And it's nice.
Cubby, say the boat line.
Oh yeah, the rising tide raises all ships.
Yes.
Yeah.
There it
is. That's a good way of putting it.
Yeah.
It's always nice to like see like competition also continue to rise, like even if we're not like around it, because I know there was a time and a place where I was sitting at like UPL, and like even casters from like UPL or people that came in fresh at USB. So like Beatdown is one that's like really good, and like he's been coming up, and I know he hasn't had a shot yet, but I'm really hoping he gets one because he's been very good and people seem to love him. The other one, which has been like it's not a pet project, I'm not going to call it, but it's been like back pocket thing that I've been running since even at USB, has actually been Dylan. I've been trying to get Dylan into color casting roles instead of desk analyst roles as much as possible, even working with him as like a play-by-play, because his like listening to everything that all of us have done for a long time, all of us have very like unique ways of thinking about things, and we do talk about things different than Dylan, but Dylan has different perspectives as well. Being a player, being a high-level player,
he's really good.
Even at the level of yourself, Mr. Cubby. Like it's just like it's a different discussion, like altogether that he has about the game, and it's creative, and I want him to be able to take that, and I want him to get roles as a color caster, because as a desk analyst he does great, but as a color caster I think he could really like kill it, and so I've been trying to get him involved, but it's not like I have say all the time. So
I have been too, because I obviously coached him and really enjoy working with Dylan, and share the same opinion that I think that he's really, really good. But yeah,
I will say, when I was running the scouting combine, I was doing drafts for teams, and he was on a team once. This has to be public. I told them they should draft Renekton Elise because he was an Elise. He's like one of the best Elise players on the server. I'm like, draft a Renekton Elise, and he's like, I'd rather kill myself than play Renekton Elise. And I'm like, wow, man, what? Like,
Our
you're the Elise.
Our scrims with Renekton Elise did not go well. It was not good. We
evidently to the point you scared him off it in scouting or like the combine at Maryville.
No, honestly, man, you gave that kid Lilia last year, and he ran everyone. That's all. That's all he needed to play. Yeah,
it's very good.
His Lilia was really good. Yeah, we reverse swept Purdue where he like just rented out space in Clam's head playing 3 games of Lilia.
I swear every team in collegiate could reverse sweep Purdue. If it weren't for best of 5s, they'd be one of the best teams in the country, but like they cannot play a best of 5. They don't have the mental fortitude to play a best of 5.
Oh, we got them once. They were probably a better team than us, but we got them once. That's pretty funny. Oh man.
Is this the gateway into the collegiate conversation part 2?
Honestly, like the collegiate conversation, like the season's just getting started. Like I'm running my tryouts after Labor Day.
Yeah.
Because we can't recruit kids because we don't have scholarships really. So I'm just trying to get the word out on campus and try out, whoever shows up is platoon higher, right? Maryville, obviously, you're lucky enough where you have an amazing program and your team's good enough to do high-level amateur events and collegiate, which is great. Because that solves the issue of what is the fall semester of what do I do with my team besides scrim for nothing, right?
Well, that's starting to get bridged also because obviously with LANs, we have Hugh, that's going to be a LAN. I was actually surprised to find out that they were keeping it a LAN because I was like, after restrictions and stuff have gone back up, I would have thought that they would have gone to online again, but here they are. They're sticking with it. I've heard things about Illinois running, like Illinois State's going to run one.
And IWU. Yeah.
And IWU, a couple of teams.
So, yeah.
Yeah. So, big LANs from collegiate all over the place, which is going to give collegiate teams more to do. It's going to feel more like sports because you're like traveling. Teams are going to get buses and like fly teams out, which is going to be really cool to see.
Oh, that's really cool.
Yeah. And hopefully also more interaction with top teams because one of the things that plagues like collegiate more than anything else is like you don't play against other top teams consistently.
Yes.
And I know you talked about like changes before anything else happened. One of the biggest things is like if the top 8 teams played each other consistently, the top 8 teams would increase in like value.
Fun.
It'd be so cool to watch too. And like having a league like that. Yeah.
I mean, the issue would be finding the top 8 because I think that you'd have to have like multiple tournaments to find the top 8.
Probably, yeah.
And I think that I'd do it region based and with teams that are not in partner conferences.
Mm-hmm.
And then make the rest like a round robin, and then have like the top 8 like auto qualify. Like they'd have to like revamp a lot of the system. But if you're Maryville, you really the way the collegiate works before I go on the spiel
for Mr. Smacks.
Yeah.
Yes, thank you.
You get 6 games, right? And it's Swiss format, and so you play the team that has the same record as you. How they initially seed it when everyone's at 0-0 is that the highest ranked team plays the lowest ranked team, and your game speed matters for tiebreakers. So, literally, Maryville will practice speed running comps where they win games in 13 minutes playing like Heimerdinger, Ziggs, Caitlyn. Like crap like
I saw Shady play so much Lucian support.
Yeah. Like, because they're playing against literal Iron players. Like, this is a terrible experience for both teams. Like, the Iron team doesn't want to go play Maryville, right? They want to get to the point where they're probably 0-4, 0-5. Like, then they actually get some competitive games for themselves, right? Maryville doesn't get competitive games until they're 4-0, 5-0, right? So, realistically, in collegiate, you get 2 or 3 competitive best of 3s a year, and then you get maybe 1 or 2 competitive best of 5s to actually get to top 32, and then there's top 32. So, if you think a calendar year of playing in collegiate, that is 9 months, and that is less than 10 competitive series that you're playing at the highest level, that needs to be fixed. Like, that's not acceptable for Maryville. And now the LANs, they do fix that, right?
A little bit.
But in the spring, there could be like a better system, right?
Yeah.
And so I think that that's something that could be a major improvement for these big teams that are investing a lot of money into these teams too. Like for the schools, like full rides, half rides are being given out consistently now. For like the top, I'd say 25 teams in the country. Like, I know we don't give full rides, and we've struggled year after year to compete at the level that we are able to with just as good of players, just because everyone else is getting so much better around us. Like, It's tough.
Mhm.
So yeah, that's the collegiate spiel.
Yeah. It's a collegiate spiel.
There's like really much to like argue against it when you're like Maryville and you get literally more competitive best of series in playing UPL than you do playing collegiate.
Yeah, I wish also there was a place where more broadcasting could happen. I feel like there are very talented teams that get very little screen time because not every college runs their own stream. Not every division has their own stream or their own coverage. If there could be division by division coverage, that'd be cool. I know like Midwest Esports does that because they like UEA is kind of associated, so they run that every once in a while, and that's kind of cool because you can at least keep up with the teams, even though they got put out in the round of 32 last year. Yeah, I guess the Poppy Mid tech that Midwest decided to invent wasn't good enough to train with for that team, GVU. But aside from that, like it would be cool if we could cover teams like a good one is like Houston. Mr. Smacks, would you know anything about University of Houston at all?
The Cougs.
Yeah, I have no idea.
University of Houston was probably top 8, maybe top 4 in collegiate. They had to play Maryville in the second round in the finals, so they played in the round of 16 and lost to Maryville. And Zoo came out and was like, "This was one of the top teams. We just put them out early because of the way the seeding was done." And so it's unfortunate that team doesn't get any viewership. That team doesn't get any necessary. Their players don't get a lot of like viewership as well.
Partner conferences are still a little bit scuffed because like in the top 32, there was really only 4 competitive best of series. Because a lot of the partner conferences, like their best team they're sending is still like
miles behind.
Not even all diamonds.
The 8th or 9th team from like the Northern Conference or the Eastern Conference is going to send.
Like my team was Diamond 1 Master Tier average, and we didn't make it because we were in a tough partner conference. Because I say tough. There were 3 good teams in our conference, and we weren't one of the 2 that made it, right? And Buffalo got invited, which you pushed for, Rebel, which I appreciate. Because Buffalo
Zoo pushed for that.
Yes, they were really good, and they did top 8. They kicked our ass all year. So it's like still like it's a growing system still. That's like where it's at really. It's a decent system. Like it's a better one they put in place compared to like top 8, but it's still growing. Yeah.
Are you saying that all schools should have Boise State 24/7 esports coverage channels?
Yes,
if they're not
honestly,
botting, that would be nice. But that would be nice. That would be really cool.
Yeah.
But no botting if possible.
Honestly, though, yes. Like just run reruns. Like. Yeah.
That's fine. Like it wouldn't be that hard to run
concept. It is a very cool concept.
It is.
It doesn't hurt you. Like as long as like there's a graphic that says like, hey, like this is like a third that's like pre-recorded. Like here's the date.
Yeah, I don't think that they put those on there for Boise State. But
well, either way, like it does help a lot with exposure, right?
Schools
should do that. Rebel's right. Not a lot of schools have broadcasts.
No, they don't. And even worse is like the system by which we collect player information at all is 0. I have to go to train for the round of 32.
You literally
I have to go to like Wikipedia and like I have to search through like Gamepedia like things or like GameFly like tournaments just to look for rosters which sometimes swap. And I'm like, can no one keep a comprehensive list of the teams that are playing and what players are on them?
Okay.
This isn't that hard.
Actually, I have an interesting question kind of related to that, Rebel. How would you solve or help the recruiting issue that exists in collegiate? Because there is a big issue with recruiting, and there's no way to centralize data. Like, literally, how people recruit is going through challenger players and just saying, are you going to college? Do you want to play league in college? Like, this is what we do. Like, it is terrible.
It's pretty horrible. Yeah.
Fun fact, I actually... out of college, I almost started the business for this, and I hit a few roadblocks that I could not. It would have taken too much upfront money to like start off, but I was close. I'm not a software. If I was a software engineer, I probably could have pulled it off, but I'm a marketer. So anyway,
that's reasonable.
This is a big problem.
Yes.
Yeah.
I know. I'm pretty sure you two have covered high school leagues before. There's still a problem with that, which is that you do not necessarily get the most competitive schools there. Because I remember watching through what was like Florida's VODs at one point, and I remember seeing teams with like gold, silver players. Either of you two familiar with? Is it Diomar? Diomar that played for Glaive. He was on a team in Florida, a high school team. He had a team of like gold plat players, and then they had Diomar, and they went to like what was effectively a finals, and they weren't broadcasted. But like, how would you get that guy like broadcast time? The thing that we did was like the scouting combine for Maryville is a really great system because we pulled collegiate players from all over the place. If they could do regional high school like combines for like especially top level teams, top level players, that kind of thing, and pull in players like Diomar, where it's like, hey, this kid's challenger, or hey, this kid's masters, or something like that. Cinnamon bread. Barrick, before the team had started, like he just went to college this year, but Barrick was another one who was a really big prospect.
Carillion still a support that's challenger and is in high school.
Yeah, things like that, which is like
so what you're referring to is the play versus thing that Rafa
that was
did.
One thing, yes.
Yeah.
We did effectively like the finals of every state. That was the only thing that we did though. We just did the finals.
Just the finals.
State. And then we did like the finals of the main high school bracket, like the nationals or whatever. I actually know who some of those players are
because of that,
but also because of the Cloud9 training grounds.
Yeah.
So some of the players are in that, and that's really cool. I wish that they had a better like outreach, but they're not funding it a lot for the Cloud9 training grounds. It is just sort of like a fun thing that they do, and a lot of the funding actually goes into like getting the kids like better systems and like Cloud9 merch and stuff, which is really cool.
That's fair.
But there's like some stuff in there, but we didn't get a lot of viewership for any of that stuff that me and Mark did.
Yeah, it would be awesome if colleges could do something like that, where colleges, like especially colleges that are recruiting for League of Legends teams, could chip together money, and then it's like, okay, here's a C9 training grounds for East, North, South, West, that kind of thing, like what you would do for football, like an Eastern Conference like finals for like high school. And what it would be is just like you'd need. I think one of the other bases that really needs to be lifted is like coaching and administration at the high school level. Desperately need some improvement. I've met some great people in that field, but there's not enough, and they don't know the game. A lot of places have coaches. They are, or some of them not even coaches. They've played the game before, and so they're like, I know the game, but mostly of the players, they help out. They're a chaperone for the team. That level needs to increase as well, because when that level increases, all of a sudden you have people who are good coaches pushing players that also then can go market them and be like, hey, my player is really good. Hey, Cloud9 amateur. My player is like a diamond 1 top laner. I can't take him any further, but I think he's got potential. I want to show you VODs from him or something like that. The same way any other sport in traditional, like, America would do. I think that's a really good system as well. That would take a lot longer because, I mean, how many people are willing to go coach at like, there's so many people that work at like Diamond and such to go be a coach.
We're still having an issue of getting League into high schools in the first place, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like I know I've like been actively reaching out like around the Chicagoland area to be like, do you want me to come to a practice? I can talk about what collegiate league's like, or like I reached out to like my high school and I was like, do you have a team? Like, would you think about having a team if I volunteered and like sat in the lab from 3 to 5 every day, right? Like that's something where I sincerely believe that the best way to grow this game is to get it in high schools. I really think that.
I agree that. Yeah. That's how football got popular. That's how sports in general got popular in a lot of those cases, like baseball and things like that, is you grow your player base at a young age. And then all of a sudden kids that are 11, 12 start playing.
How popular
and like they're
Little League?
Trained to be 18.
The Little League World
super
Series.
Popular.
Yeah.
It's awesome.
Yeah.
Ground up. That's
There was a kid that robbed a home run last night. He's like 13. That's lit. It's on ESPN.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's I think I agree with you, like attacking high schools. I find it interesting that like
attacking
but like focusing on that. I find it interesting though, like you focusing on the coaching aspect. I still think there has to be an easier way to like recruit people using some sort of software. But, like
I agree with
there
that.
are a lot of companies that are trying to do that, like be the recruiting platform for esports, and there hasn't been anyone that's like coming out on top. eFuse they pivoted a different direction, but that was like one of their original directives actually, is that they're going to be like a recruiting platform for colleges for esports players.
Yeah. More youngins.
More youngins.
We do need more youngins.
Yeah. Well, that's sort of what Proving Grounds is, except not like school related. So that's something that's cool.
Talking real youngins.
Yeah. Need
Not
younger than
fully
that.
grown youngins. Yeah.
Print more general snipers. Clone him in every role. Oh man. So, well, we've been here for about an hour here, Dean. I want to get some of your thoughts on Proving Grounds that's about to happen in a week from today, because I feel like we would be remiss if we didn't mention the things that are going to happen in that tournament.
Sure.
So, have all the teams locked in.
Mm-hmm.
We're a week out. I assume that we're all going to be on that broadcast. I don't think it's been scheduled
I don't think
yet.
it has that. I know.
But I assume that they'll do that. What are your thoughts for this one in comparison to the spring, perhaps?
I think Team Liquid is a titan that I don't think C9 was last split. Because C9 reined back a very similar roster. And that finals went to 5 games, but I don't think that was a 5-game finals. It felt like Team Liquid trolled a little bit.
Agreed.
But I think Team Liquid Academy is...
Game 4 was lit, though.
It was a great game. Great game. But
entertainment value, high.
Yes, it was fantastic.
So before you go any further with the Team Liquid point, I do want to bring up that this is something that we talked about on this channel before. It's not public like announced yet, but we're using some hypotheticals here.
What the Sherlock Holmes, a little bit of deduction, you know?
Yeah, some detective work.
Okay.
Jenkins and Armeo are probably going to Worlds with Team Liquid.
I agree with Armeo. I had this discussion, I think, with Cubby and with Joshi on the desk, which is we don't know what... The thing is, you need to be able to bring a player that when you substitute is going to do something for your team. I agree Jenkins will do something different than Alfari, but I don't see a situation in which they would put Jenkins in to win a game over Alfari.
100% agree, but every team at Worlds gets 2 subs, and they're
true.
players.
They have to bring 2
subs. And,
so then it's a question of, like, who would you bring? And I think
Armeo's
we had this
guaranteed.
discussion.
Yeah.
We think Armeo's
guaranteed.
Jenkins. I actually think Jan is the other choice. I think Jan not only brings more than I think he brings something different than tactical, and I think that's more important for the league. Not to say Jenkins isn't a better player. I think Jenkins would do better on Team Liquid.
He's a beast.
Than Jan would subbing in, but Jan brings more different kind of tactics than what would tactical. And if I were the coach of Team Liquid, I would go having Jan as a backup does more for the team than having Jenkins, because I don't see a situation.
Invest in him. Great experience. Gets to play solo queue over in Europe now.
Absolutely.
Yeah. That's interesting.
So that's my opinion there.
So
I don't know that Jenkins leaves.
Yeah. Either way, I agree with you that that Team Liquid Academy wins the tournament.
Yes.
Don't think we're actually going to get that team.
Yeah, that's fair. Inori being in is, especially with Nocturne kind of having fallen out of favor, I have my worries about Inori, especially Diane is nasty.
A slight one trick.
That's true. But I agree with you. I think if that Team Liquid shows up with Inori, things do get shaken. From that point, who's next on the list? 100 Thieves, C9 there. So FlyQuest still has half of their starting roster in, which is going to be a thing.
Those are
I think Wildcard's got to be in that discussion too.
Yes, the 3 top academy teams are going to have to send.
They have the same Worlds dilemma.
Oh, they have the same Worlds.
Because it's all 3.
Oh.
So literally, like
C9.
The 3 top academy teams their orgs were the 3 that are representing NA Worlds.
Yeah. They might not actually do this. This is conjecture.
That's fair.
Right now.
We are deducting that this is going to happen.
I wonder how this changes the timetable, because Worlds got swapped to Europe, and I've heard that it could be another month delay, which means that it could be
like in November.
Oh,
it might be a month delay. I've heard this is possible. I'm not saying it is, because again, that's all speculation. But given that they have to change everything, month time seems reasonable for Riot to turn around to go to Europe, which would then give obviously more time for these players to be around. So the full rosters might be around for that. Now, that said, it would be cool if 100 Thieves sent Poom because then we would get Busio because I want to see Busio.
That'd be lit.
But it would be awesome, but it might not happen. So
that's interesting. I did not know that they were considering delaying it. That makes sense, though.
Yeah.
If that's the case, then that does save Proving Grounds. But this was an issue that we knew about.
I see that.
And it is a bummer.
For a long time.
Because
by we, of course, we mean the people that are on the LCS teams and stuff. Like
now, how would like C9 and FlyQuest handle that? Because neither. Well, I guess no, because the amateur FlyQuest is cool. Wait, what's wrong with FlyQuest?
Meaning
FlyQuest
like
isn't going to
they
Worlds.
aren't going to
Oh,
Worlds.
FlyQuest isn't going to Worlds. Okay, but C9. Oh, wait, yeah, C9 is going to Worlds. I was gonna say they can pull from their amateur team, but amateur team is literally at the tournament. So
same with 100.
Yeah, so that's the thing. So it might affect 5 teams.
Neither one of them have back. Although again, Busio is at least a par, so at least Poom could be replaced.
Yes.
Yeah, but
I guess you take Tenacity and you let Fallen Bandit just like coach for one team, play for the other.
Bring back the
That
Kennen,
would be
baby.
hilarious.
Let's go. Yes.
Honestly, if Jenkins isn't playing, we need at least one Kennen player in the tournament. So,
Oh yeah.
You know.
Oh yeah. That would do. It'd be nice.
Oh man.
I do want to talk about amateur teams because I think amateur teams need some coverage.
There are more of them this time.
There are 7 this
Courtesy
time, right?
of Supernova.
Yes, Supernova. Upsetting Maryville, which upset me, but that's fine.
Not only upsetting Maryville,
they also
CLG
upset
too, yeah.
CLG, which was big because I was really looking forward to the CLG Maryville rematch because that's who, Maryville lost to in a 2-1 in the previous UGP, and then there were 2 other tier 1s, but like they had lost, so it was a revenge match that potentially was going to get covered, and here we are. So,
here we are.
But amateur teams seem solid. The fact that Zeus was our 4th seed actually seems like our amateur level has gone up, although I do have my question marks about C9 amateur still. Yes, they got 2nd.
I do.
I don't know that they were the 2nd seed in amateur, which is not to disrespect it. I don't think they're a bot like
really
below 6 or 7. They had a great tournament, and they had great performances.
But I think that they don't take wildcard red to 5 if it's not for the fact that, Bradley was at a LAN all week and they weren't practicing with Bradley. Yeah.
It's a difficulty.
Yeah. So, but I think that C9, that AM definitely proved they're a top 6 team in amateur throughout their
definitely a top 7, top 6 team, 100%.
Yeah.
I just, I do worry that like expectations for wildcard red are through the roof because they are the replacement for NoOrg, who won last split. And I think those expectations are very well founded because wildcard red is a very solid team. I've talked to Morgan a number of times, and Morgan has told me that like he wasn't even scrimming the bottom half academy teams because they weren't good enough or they weren't getting quality scrims.
No, I think wildcard red is top 4 expectation.
I agree. I don't know that C9 is at that level though, or close to that level. Top 8 I think could be achieved by another. I think AOE could be in that discussion that and 100 Thieves Next, if they play the way they did at ESL, definitely could be in that discussion because they played really well at ESL.
But that was also with Busio for the majority of the tournament.
Yes.
Yeah.
It was, however, even with the substitute.
They won with.
I can't remember his name. Gweiss. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, who's one of my favorite players. I've loved Gweiss for a long time.
Yeah.
They won not only the third force match with Gweiss, but they also won a game off of Wildcard Red legitimately with Gweiss.
Oh yeah,
which I think was the more surprising part for me. So yeah.
The question for that series was like, do they win a game or not? And they played that game really well. Yeah.
They did very well. So I have high hopes for that. And again, AOE's roster has been amazing since the beginning of the split. I feel like they, even though they got like seeded in, I feel like they have not lived up to what expectations were set on them. I feel like they should have been the number 2 team significantly.
I agree.
Top of any other team.
But also, I think they got some really bad breaks.
They pulled bad draws in some of those tournaments.
Well, not only that, but like they got beat 3-1 by AOE randoms.
Their sister team, the only team that they've been scrimming for the entire first half of the split.
Yeah. And that upset was off of a Baron steal and then Sketchstreams not getting a Trist reset by like 5 HP. And that literally dictated 2 games because AoE randoms were taking scaling. And so it bought them 5 minutes and then like ruined AoE's like death push. And so that was a very close best of series that did go way of randoms. They beat them. But I think that because of that, people were definitely down on AoE. And I'm still very, very high on Darkwings and also RBM, who's playing well. So.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
But I have faith. I really think Darkwings and RBM can take it to some of the academy teams. I think the rest of the roster is like starting to get to the point where like they can't too.
Yeah.
I also want to take a point just to hype up the boy Zyko, who stepped in for AoE. We don't have a ton of supports that are super, super competitive in amateur or even a LCS. There's a reason why like Core JJ is the best and he got imported. Yeah, it's tough in any sense. When you think about academy supports that are like well established, I think of like Poom, right? Yurson, and then there's like Isla. And outside of those three, I'm like, oh, who? Isles. Isles isn't bad either. And I think even I would add Newbie on that list because I think Newbie's really good, and on a good team, he'd probably look a lot better. My bad. Wasn't trying to flame Golden Guardians. I'm just saying that like on a team that was top half, he probably continues his level of play, right? But those are 5 of 10 positions. Zyko has surprised me with how well he has played. In terms of amateur, he has bodied a couple of other really high name supports. The biggest one was Shady. He like bodied Shady in the laning phase. In fairness, that was a rough series for Shady because they were putting him on Tom Kench duty and like with fasting Senna and like locking him in bot lane prison for some reason. But
the last hurrah of the champion.
Whenever someone comes in at the support role and is able to beat down other people, like the way that Busio did,
Shady's real good.
My eyes on them, and Zyko was one of those guys too. So I want to put a bunch of. I don't think anyone put enough hype on AoE. I didn't get a chance to talk about him during like a cast at any point, but like Zyko deserved it. He was very good.
Yeah, I mean he really helped to turn around the team too, and got them their qualification, which is super cool.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think that the level of the amateur teams is really curious because, I mean, if Cloud9 Amateur and 100 Thieves next get eaten, then I don't really know like what the narrative will have to be around that. I think that's going to be one of our harder jobs of the entire year. Is
figuring out what to do with those 2 teams. Yeah.
Well, those 5 teams, including Team Liquid. Oh, yeah. Team Liquid will be the easiest one if they have Inori and potentially Dokla. But yeah, those teams are going to be really hard for us to.
Dude, I still think that Liquid is scary. By the way.
Oh yeah.
And in the first round, there are going to be 3 Academy team kills, and there is a quadrant with Dignitas, Golden Guardians, Immortals, and 100 Thieves. One of those teams is guaranteed the bottom 4. None of those teams are bottom 4 teams going into the tournament. So, maybe you could argue GG if they're not playing
GG.
hot.
They get an arrow buff.
They're not bottom 4. I don't think they're bottom 4 of the tournament. Like,
an arrow buff is
Who's your
huge.
bottom 4 in the tournament? I'm curious to hear that.
Oh, this is going to be Flame. I don't know. Oh, man.
See, it depends. Because, like, if C9 AM have to send members to play with C9 Academy...
Oh, they're cooked, yeah.
Then I think C9 AM are cooked, and I think 100 Next might be cooked off that too.
That's possible.
So then that's already 3 teams. Would I put Golden Guardians there?
Well, they kind of smashed Resolve.
Yeah, but Resolve also did smash them first.
Yeah, I guess that's sort of back and forth. By the
way,
right,
the 4th team is just whichever Resolve shows up. If it's bad Resolve, then they're bottom 4.
Resolve.
If it's good Resolve, though, it might be GG bottom 4. I don't know.
Okay.
Then again, the GG people will probably get really mad at me for saying that. And then they'll, top 5, 6 again and prove us all wrong like they did in last split. So
an arrow buff.
But one of those teams is guaranteed the bottom 4. That's insane to me.
It's insane, yeah.
Those are not bottom 4 teams. Like, even if I'm saying the GG's on the edge, I don't think so. So
there.
That's a crazy quadrant.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Big question time.
Sure.
Without knowing the rosters of the 5 teams that are maybe being altered, does Wildcard Red win the tournament? My gut reaction right now, assuming that there are changes, yes. I think
really? So you would take Wildcard Red against the field?
I do think that they win a tournament, especially considering that it is double elimination.
Oh man, I would love to see TL at full strength against Wildcard Red. I think that
the
would be a really
finals
good series.
are Wildcard Red and FlyQuest, assuming the changes are happening. If they're not, then Team Liquid wins the whole thing.
I'm taking the field. I can't take Wildcard Red. I think the expectation for them is top 4, but I got to take the field. I got to take the other 15 teams. Even if the top 3 teams are going to be weakened by Worlds. It's actually really funny how that panned out this year, too.
Yeah.
So I think there's 3 teams that beat Wildcard Red. I think those teams consistently are TL, C9, and 100 Thieves. And in terms of, like, who can beat them consistently. FlyQuest also should probably be on that list. I think Wildcard Red can beat Immortals. I think they can beat EG, especially in best of series. I think they can do those things pretty consistently. And so those are the ones that are question marks of, like, can they beat them 60% or more?
Yeah.
In 60% of series in that regard. So then
Wildcard FlyQuest is going to be really fun.
It's going to be
Bradley against
good.
Triple. Ooh.
Mm-hmm.
Bradley Winston against NXI Triple.
Yeah.
Sign me up.
That's going to be really good.
Sign me up.
I actually... So I think Wildcard is favored bot, definitely. Mm-hmm. I don't think there's a team where that's not true.
Oh yeah.
But
I'll take King and Isles.
If they're there.
Yeah, if they're playing.
Yeah. If they're there, I think that's fair. I also might take Jan Ayla.
I'd take Luger too.
Oh, Luger Prim's really good too.
All right.
There's a solid top 4. Could be altered. And if they are, again, wild card.
All right, I'm going to throw something spicy here because I think I have something spicy.
Okay.
So let's say teams drop, right? Let's say we have to replace 2 players.
5 teams affected.
5 teams affected. Let's assume 100 Thieves is taking 2 players to Worlds. I think Poom is going to go pretty much no matter what, which means Busio steps in, right? Who's the other person? When I consider that, I think the only person I would be willing to swap is Abadage, which means that you're taking Ryoma, who's already been on like a professional team, has experience at Worlds, that kind of thing. This means if the team is affected from 100 Thieves next, Young Mid takes his spot. I think that is an improvement. I think 100 Thieves next looks more dangerous with Young Mid. I don't know how Busio does, but I think they look more dangerous with Young Mid in mid lane. And if Busio is a sufficient replacement for Poom, I think they're the best team of the tournament significantly.
Ooh.
Wildcard Red is the only team that stands up to that if you have replacements for C9 and for TL.
That's spicy.
That is spicy.
I think that 100 are gonna do okay. Like I think that I think that they can do okay. Also, C9 could grab Wixie.
Wixie's really good.
Yeah.
King is so good though. It's so hard to replace King
is so good.
Wixie's not King is my
so
problem.
Good.
Wixie is great. I don't think he's a replacement for King, unfortunately.
Okay, so
I think you could see him in that role, but I don't think he could do it immediately.
Wixie and XU are also like huge and like the only win conditions that are played through on Cloud9. And I think that's a really like key factor to how the amateur team plays, especially Captain Trimps, who does very, very well at the jungle helper playstyle.
You mean dog?
I was
National Dog Day, man. Come on, play some respect.
I was using the best word that I could. Also, it's past midnight where I am. So
it's actually 11:20 where I'm from, so it's still National Dog Day.
2 out of 3. Let's go.
You guys still have Dog Day.
Get leashed up.
If Cloud9 Amateur loses either Wixie or XU, then they lose a really big win condition. I think that's a problem.
Yeah.
For sure.
I don't know. It's going to be really interesting, like overall.
If it's still solo bot, only clear team fight maybe at 30 minutes meta, then maybe the bot lane doesn't actually matter that much.
I think no matter what happens, even if 5 teams are affected, that is a bummer because we will not see as strong of talent. But still going to be a banger tournament, and we're going to have a lot of surprises no matter what we think going in.
I want to see more Tomio on EG. That was a good series. Against C9, I was devastated that they lost to C9 Academy.
Tomio,
man, I love EG Academy with Tomio. It looks good.
Tomio is a good player. He was already a top half Academy jungler, I think. Does that best 5. He's really good. He's really good.
Now that I'm thinking about the bot lane meta, and if it remains as weak side bot lane all the time, and your support roams out and your bot laner just clears the whole time, I'm actually doubling down on my old thing and saying that Team Liquid are favored, as long as they don't bring Yawn.
I think,
to Worlds.
yeah, if Yawn and Isla are there, Yawn and Isla are.
I think
it's
Yawn
so
and
hard
Isla
with arrow
I think they're the
adaptation. It's
best
so
at
hard
that.
to say, but yeah, I think Yawn and Isla are right there. Those are the two best bot
I
lanes.
think they are the best at that meta. I think Yawn is the best weak side AD that we have in the Proving Ground space, and he has been for like a year, because he perfected that craft on 100 next. So
I'm hearing disrespect though for the roaming of Sam Parzazuris.
I've been singing Yawn's praises for that since he was Akinoki.
Akinoki.
So,
why do these players sweat up their names? Like, I love Yawn.
Dude,
Yawn is great, but Akinoki is so fun
name.
to say. It's great, yeah.
It just makes me think of gnocchi pasta, and I kind of want some now.
Ooh.
That is getting late, so.
Yeah, we are getting late. We're coming down to the wire. Dean, thank you so much for being on the show.
Of course, yeah.
This has been an absolute pleasure. I cannot wait for Proving Grounds. I cannot wait to see what we've all got in store for that, and what all the players and the teams have in store for that. Only a week away. It does not feel like it's only it doesn't feel like it should start this soon, but it is.
Yeah, a week from
really
today our time.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, it starts next Thursday.
Pretty amazing. For me it's only 6 days away. Amazing. Time zone diff. I also have the Halsey album to go listen to after this. So.
This is how Smacks is always ahead of the game.
Yeah. He's 1 hour ahead of us. Damn.
One step ahead.
I have to wait to watch
Dean,
the Halsey album.
What's up?
Yeah. Where can people find you on the internet?
Twitter.com. Foxcasts. It's pretty much the only social media I'm on consistently. There's only one other place. Well, of course, like the Academy channel, Amateur, most of those places. Rafa's Discord in general, just like Rebel Fox, yada, 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 all those things. The only other place you can find me, somewhere pretty important to me right now, there is a slim but existent chance that the VCS will be attending Worlds this year. If that's the case, your boy is drafting up questions in Vietnamese to get as much as possible because the summer split did not happen.
Yes.
So I will be collecting every narrative as I can from every one of the top teams just to try to get an idea of who's going to qualify, what they're going to do. Even after covering spring, I just want to make sure that story's out there.
And we
if that
really want to
happens,
get the VCS there.
VCS English will be covering the play-in tournament. We've heard basically that the top 4 teams will be taken and that the top 2 from that will go. The top is the seed directly into the tournament. The second is one of the qualifier teams.
One of those being Gigabyte Marines.
GAM is the number 1, but they'd have to win through.
Yes.
Right.
My favorite team in the world, which is Saigon Buffalo, was the number 2, so they'd also seed directly into the qualification tournament. If that happens, VCS English, come watch me. I'll be on desk. I'll be casting. I'll be doing something with all the stories from all the Vietnamese players that I can gather as much as possible without the translation being too horrid. So.
That's cool.
Sweet.
Yeah, that's actually a really cool project. Yeah, so we've had your Twitter up on the screen the whole time. Definitely go check.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, go check that out for Rebel. Because I'm sure that you'll be posting about that there.
And now you know where to find him online. Where can we find you in person? What is your home address?
St. Louis. You can come knock on every door in St. Louis. You'll find me eventually.
Well, you can go to Soldier Field and find Kanye's house right now. So.
Ooh, all right.
Found a reference.
Well,
boom, got it in.
With that, this has been episode 31 of the Proving Grounds pod. Thank you so much to Rebel Fox for coming on the show. Thank you to Cubby for putting up with my antics all the time. And thank you to you for listening. If you still are, we appreciate it very, very much. If you want to support the Proving Grounds pod content, you can find us on Twitter at pgroundspod. We got our all of our other platforms at Proving Grounds Pod. We got Twitch, YouTube, Spotify, Apple, Anchor, and Google. Check us out on all of those, or probably more realistically, just one of your preference. You don't have to watch it 6 times. But if you do, I won't stop you. Thank you so much for tuning in. We will hopefully be back with another episode of Raising NA, pending our hectic Wild Rift schedule for me and Rafa. Maybe another date will come. And Cubby and I are currently planning a very cool guest for next week's episode of Proving Grounds Pod.
Probably on Wednesday, but we have to check.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It'll likely be on Wednesday. We will have more updates soon. But yeah, thank you so much for tuning in. Have a good night, everyone. Bye-bye.